Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. We're going to have a bit of a break from the HG 407 this week and have a play with some wireless camera stuff. We've got a Just Do Life FX797T, a camera with a built-in 5.8 GHz transmitter, a 5.8 GHz receiver, and this one's pretty generic. The trick is this one's got USB, so it should make for a nice compact setup. And lastly, we've got a pair of antennas I found on eBay for a quite ridiculous price while searching around for some cheap goodies. The camera I got a bit of a deal on. They're normally 25 to 30 quid, and I got this one for 15. The thing is, the box is water damaged. You can see where some of the colours have run on the cardboard. It feels pretty nasty too, like a box that's been in a damp, mouldy shed for the last 10 years. The camera itself though is perfect, so I think it's a fair trade-off. The receiver was also 15 quid from a UK shop. You can find them even cheaper if you buy direct from China. And if you need one with a bit more range, you can get a similar one with 2 receivers built in. Basically, all you do is hook up the USB, which powers it, and it shows up like a USB webcam. And in this box, we've got a pair of cloverleaf antennas. They were £1 shipped, and I've had them hanging around for a year or so. So we might as well use the receiver one on the USB receiver, which might just give us a little bit more range than the stock one. The camera itself is really rather small, and for most uses it weighs next to nothing. The antenna on the top is a bit vulnerable. It's soldered directly to the PCB, which has no give in it at all, so using it on a drone wouldn't be ideal. One slightly dodgy non-landing and it's a goner. The transmitter's only 25 milliwatts, but that's all we're allowed here in the UK, so it's going to do the trick. And for my planned use, it should be way more than needed. For power, it's got a small white connector that matches up with a 1S LiPos used on some of the UMX planes. So if you're after plug and play, it really couldn't be easier. A well-used 150 mAh 1S LiPo makes the camera go for around 20 minutes, which given the size really isn't bad at all. If you needed more, you could always modify the wiring and connect it to a much bigger battery. The only other bit the camera comes with is the small manual, the useful part being the frequency table, but then you can largely forget it, and if you get lots of interference, you just press the button on the camera once or twice to change the channel and off you go. The receiver next, and it comes with the basic 5.8 GHz antenna, which just screws into the SMA connector on the end. At the other end there's an analog video port, which might be handy for goggles, but the one that we're interested in is the USB port, where we plug in the included USB OTG cable. Now for those not familiar, OTG stands for on the go. With most phones and tablets, when you connect their USB port up to a PC or Mac, it will show up as a device. The tablet will look like a camera or storage device. OTG lets the USB port work the other way, so the tablet becomes the host. You can then connect USB sticks, USB gamepads, and many other things. In this case, we're going to be using a tablet that supports OTG with the receiver. All we do is connect up the receiver to the tablet, and I've already installed some software that should work. When the receiver gets detected, Android puts up a list that we can choose from. I'm just going to try OTG View, as it's often recommended for the receiver. When it's loaded, we hit connect and wait patiently for the picture to show. But all it does is crash. A bit of a pain. I did try a dozen or so other apps with similar results, either a crash or simply no picture. I found another useful little program called USB OTG Checker that checks to see if the tablet supports OTG, because not all of them do. However, this one does. Green ticks all round, and in the list the receiver's listed as a USB 2 PC camera, so it's being detected just fine. After some more fiddling around, I found another little app called Go FPV, the only one that has useful error messages. And there we are. The device does not have a UVC driver, which more or less means there's no driver for the receiver. And unfortunately, installing a driver isn't as simple as on a Mac or a PC. We'd probably have to root the tablet to get it working. Now I did try another couple of tablets and phones with identical results. I even tried some other OTG cables and adapters, just on the off chance, but it was still a no-go. From what I can see, I'm just a bit unlucky that none of my devices have support. A lot of devices do, but it can be a bit tricky to find out which ones work and which ones don't. It's a shame, as the tablet with the small receiver would have made for an excellent little portable rig. Still, we're not beaten yet. If it won't work with a tablet, it should still work with a laptop. It's quite a bit bulkier, but on the plus side we do get a much bigger screen. All we do is hook up the receiver with a standard micro USB cable and load up some software that works with webcams. In this case I'm running Debian and OBS. On a Mac, QuickTime works just fine, and no doubt there's loads of webcam recording software on Windows too. When it's all up and working, we're greeted with a nice screen full of noise. We have to power up the camera, so there's a signal. Then we hold the button on the receiver for a couple of seconds to start the auto scan. It's painfully slow, but it does get there in the end. Both the camera and receiver seem to remember what channels they're set to, so you don't have to rescan every time unless you change the channel. When it does finally lock on, we get a washed out but quite usable picture from the camera. It's very wide angle, and obviously you're looking at a recording of the laptop screen, but you can see it's pretty much just plug and play to get it working on the laptop. Now we know it's all working nicely, we can swap the receiver antenna for the cloverleaf one. Now it's debatable whether it's going to make any difference, and for where I'm planning to use the camera, range isn't going to be an issue anyway. But it looks funky, and it seems a shame to have it and not put it to use. All we do then is unscrew the stock antenna, and then in a perfect world just screw on the new one. But because not all SMA connectors are the same, it's not going to fit. Both ends have a center pin. What we need then is an SMA to RP SMA adapter. They're available from various eBay sellers for 50p each, and they simply screw into place. Of course, if you're going to do it properly, you'd simply get an antenna with the right connector already, but it's going to do for what we've got. Next then is the camera, and we need some way to mount it. Now we could just use a big blob of blue tack. It's so light it's not going to go anywhere, but we'll also need to raise it up a bit. So I've put together this 3D printed mount. There's a fairly chunky magnet in the bottom, and it uses screws for hinge pins, so you can adjust the angle. And the camera simply presses into the cradle in the top. Now if you were flying with it, you'd probably want a bit more security, but we're not going to be flying, we're driving. The plan is to try the camera on the Grand Hauler. It's almost ideal for magnetic mounting, as with the rear panel removed we've got full access to the nice flat roof. All we do is hold the camera mount roughly where we want it, and carefully offer up another magnet on the inside. When the magnets get close enough, they jump together. For the type of driving that the Grand Hauler sees, it's going to be more than secure enough. If anything, it's probably a bit overkill. Those neodymium magnets are way stronger than you might expect. To remove the camera, all we do is put a hand under the internal magnet and carefully pull the camera away, leaving no trace. I think the only minor concern is the outside magnet could scratch up the paint, so we might need a bit of cloth or rubber sheet. Other than that, it looks like it should work a treat. Right, so here we are again at the Chilton Village Hall with the Midlands and South East RC Truckers Group. Good turnout again with lots of trucks on the layout. Even on a fairly small layout like this, it's infinitely more fun than doing circuits in a car park. If you have a truck and you don't get much use from it, I highly recommend finding a group like this. Anyway, you can just about see the camera on the roof of my Grand Hauler here. Now I did drive it with the trailer too, but not being able to see the trailer on camera made judging the corners a bit tricky. I had to keep looking up to check I wasn't about to hit anything. The view from the camera was pretty good. It's only NTSC, so we're getting roughly 640 by 480, so the image does look a bit low res, but that's because it is. The thing is though, for driving the truck it's plenty good enough. The camera being very wide angle does make the front of the bonnet look a bit strange, but at least you can see the front of the chrome grille. Judging the distance is a bit tricky, but you do get used to it. In terms of signal quality, every so often there's a very minor glitch, but most of the time you can go one end of the hall to the other without ever losing the video. I didn't do anything special with the receiver, it was just sat beside the laptop on a table. It's especially good since a lot of the time there was someone stood between the receiver and the truck. Despite this, it still worked pretty much flawlessly. It's not easy to make out, but you might notice the truck on the laptop screen isn't the Grand Hauler. I gave the camera to my friend Graham, who popped it on a WPL truck. Especially handy as I could record the footage from the onboard and record with a proper camera at the same time for some picture-in-picture action. It's a lot of fun and surprisingly immersive, even on a laptop screen. Now, a set of goggles, especially with a servo pan and tilt, would be better, but if things aren't set up just right, wearing goggles can make you feel a bit queasy after a few minutes. This test setup worked well enough, and I've already started planning a more involved indoor camera truck rig with multiple cameras and at the very least a pan servo on one of them, rear view cameras so you can keep an eye on the trailer, and well, it's still early in the planning phases, so if you have any ideas or interesting products, let me know in the comments. There's a few more random clips left over, so I'll let those roll and leave you to it. So, as always, thanks for watching. Like if you liked, comment if you've got something to say, and subscribe if you're not already. Bye guys! Side of the roundabout. It don't matter though in this country.